Hey, what's up, everybody? Chris here. I'm the CEO of a startup company focused on ensuring there's a sustainable supply of human plasma and other components necessary to treat and cure the rare and chronic diseases that rely on plasma-derived therapies. I'm also the host of this podcast. Did you know there are more than 1 million plasma donors and more than 100,000 dedicated staff and professionals supporting this industry? But no one is having real conversations focused on the issues that exist within the current system. We sit down with people from all walks of life to have real conversations about all things plasma so that we can all learn the human side of this incredible business. Happy Monday. Today we're thrilled to have a special guest joining us, a dedicated plasma donor whose contributions are making a difference in lives around the world. So I met Chuck a few weeks back and while he was donating, and we got to talking, and I just knew we had to have him on the podcast. So Chuck, thank you for taking the time today. We're going to take a look at plasma donation through the lens of a current donor and hear Chuck's perspective on the impact, the process, and the ethics involved in compensating donors. So Chuck, maybe to kick it off, could you tell us a little bit about your background and what led you to become a plasma donor?
Sure. Well, first, thanks for having me. I think I was customer number 3 here at the Raleigh location, and I was absolutely thrilled to find that you were open. You and I had a discussion about the history of that location and what was there before. And I was driving by, and the door was sort of cracked open, and I said, peeked my head in and said, "Hey, are you guys open for business yet? Because I'd really like to become a donor." And they said, "Boy, that's great. Okay, sure. Come on in, and we're going to start in a few days." And I guess you had sort of like a soft opening. But to me, I've been donating for a long time. It was a local place called the Blood Connection, and I guess I had given, most of the time it was platelets and some plasma for a long time, close to 20 years. So am I a blood donor / plasma donor junkie? Maybe a little bit, but I think that it's a worthwhile endeavor. And if I can take the video conference or listen to music while I'm doing it, I think it's something worthwhile. You're changing people's lives, so I think it's a good thing.
Yeah. Okay, so tell me about your first experience in donating plasma.
Yeah, so the first time I went in, I mean, like I said, I've given for over 20 years. So
Yeah.
I was really surprised, and I was impressed how thorough the very first time you walk in, the procedure and the background, and looking at everything like, oh, is this person an IV junkie? Are you healthy? Do you have any hepatitis? And you still fill out the same kind of questionnaire, but they also ask you questions so that there's no tomfoolery where you could be lying on that kind of exam. And that was done really well. So that was probably, I'm going to say, about a half an hour of an additional screen to make sure that I was healthy and that I could donate, including looking for track marks on the arms and toes and things that I would have never thought of. But that kind of thoroughness should make people feel that they're going to get a good product from you. So yeah, and then after that, it was the normal kind of screen, and I gave my first donation, which was probably, I guess, just about 45 minutes or an hour long, and that's the regular thing now that we have whenever I donate. Yeah.
So we're going to dive more into the process here in a little bit. So thanks for that overview. So you have a long history of donating blood, platelets, plasma. You're currently a plasma donor. So tell me about when you donate, how do you think about that impact?
Well, to me, I always say, like, people say, "Oh, are you donating again? Didn't you just donate last week?" And I say, "Yeah, I can donate twice a week." And they say, "That's a lot of donations." And I said, well, not really. First, your location just happens to be, the best for me because I'm in a townhouse right behind where your office is. So I could literally walk home in 5 minutes, right? So to me, if I was going to go grab a sandwich or sit down somewhere, I could do that, or I could be donating plasma. And it only takes such a short amount of time that, I can do the surveys remotely, through an internet connection. And then when I show up, it's literally just show up, and they take a little, they check for, I think, iron and and one of the other levels. And then they say, yeah, you're good to go. And then, you're donating literally within 15 minutes of arriving. And that is great because it saves so much time. And as opposed to having to sit and wait, the whole process is very quick.
Yeah, yeah. We'll segue here in just a second, but we've done a lot to make the intake process easier to a degree. When we think about plasma donors, and I was a donor myself, and I always thought of it like, hey, I need money, I'm gonna go donate. And I think that's true for almost all plasma donors, right? And then the donor comes in, and then we're able to educate and say, hey, you're actually doing good, not just here getting money, right? You're doing good. Yeah. And that's what keeps people coming back and being involved in the process. It takes a lot of plasma to impact patients around the world. These are rare and chronic conditions, right? So while the patient populations are small, they're small in a population of 8 billion people on the planet. And it takes a significant amount of plasma to create a medication. As an example, for one hemophilia patient, it takes up to 1,200 donations to treat one patient for 1 year. So you think about the number of people that have these conditions, it takes a lot of plasma. And so frequency is really important to keep donors coming back, keeping them engaged in the process. So you are having a massive impact on people's lives around the world. And before we get too far into this, I want to make sure that we thank you for your participation as a plasma donor.
And you're quite welcome. I think I'm up to number 30 at this point.
All right.
Since you opened.
All right. I like it. Yeah. I like it. So going back to the process itself. Okay. So you come in on that first visit and it's a little more extensive. Tell me a little bit more about what it was like for you on your first visit as a plasma donor.
Yeah, it was actually interesting because the other places I had donated at before that they just said, okay, sign this. And do you know what kind of blood type you are? And you sort of show that. And they go, we're going to test it anyway. And that's great. But nobody ever did such a thorough exam. And the person doing it was, I can't remember the guy's name, but he was a nurse, or he's actually a paramedic, really nice guy. And so I asked him, why is it so thorough? And he goes, because we care about this. We really want the product to be top notch. And I said, okay, but fair enough. And he goes, do you have anything to hide? And I said, absolutely not. I give on a regular basis. So I'm just really happy you guys are open here. And it's convenient for me. So, but I was impressed at that because they took the time to dig in. And even one time I had a survey question that I filled out wrong because, there's probably about 35 or close to 40 questions. And one I just sort of overlooked, and it said, are you feeling well and healthy today? And I think I clicked no. And he said, okay, we're going to go sit down and have a talk about this unless you just made a mistake. And I said, okay. So, and then I realized that all those survey results do count and they do care about what they say, which is, again, just another way to double check. So, and I was able to donate that day, even though I made a mistake on my questionnaire. So, yeah. So I think a lot about your process. It's probably the most thorough process I've seen.
Yeah, donor health and safety is really important. I mean, if you think about the Hippocratic Oath, and I'm not a physician by any means, but there's this concept of do no harm, right? So you have to respect the donor because you can't harm the donor in order to treat the patient, because then you have two patients, right? So checking that the health and safety of the donor is really critically important, not to mention ensuring that the product that you're donating is safe and suitable to be manufactured into these therapies. We like to think of the system as a cumulative safety process, right? In more than 3 decades, there has not been one single case of any sort of transmitted infection from plasma donation. And so you think about it's clean plasma into the manufacturing process, then there's a process in the manufacturing process that has a purification process to remove anything that might go in to actually transmit an infection into a patient. So there's the whole cumulative design of the system works to ensure the safety of the patients, but also on the front end, the safety of the donors. So Chuck, tell me then, okay, so that first process, kind of a long process, right? It's 2.5, 3 hours, depending on how busy the center is and how detailed your medical history is. Tell me about your experience on visits after that.
Yeah, so once I discovered that I could do the survey from my house, or even on the walk over to the center in the 2-3 minutes or 4 minutes that it actually takes me to get there, I said, well, this is great. I could walk over and grab a coffee and do this on my phone, which is, again, a wonderful thing. Love technology. You guys just make it really easy. And then after that, it was, you come in, you scan a barcode because you take your survey, and then you scan a barcode and it goes, okay. And you go right to a window, and somebody, does a little finger stick and checks your, whatever the levels are of your iron, and so that you can donate. And I was sitting within 5 minutes of getting to the place. And that to me was such a wonderful thing, because it was like an express service compared to what I've been used to at other centers.
Great. Now, how about the donation experience itself? So you get out to the machine, then you're hooked up. What's that experience like?
So when I first got there, I said, oh, well, this is slightly different from previous places I've been to. And I was really amazed that it was so short, because I've given platelets, and sometimes that is almost 2 hours. And it's sickening, and it's whatever. And even some places wanted to do a stick in each arm, which was sort of not very cool. And they said, well, this is the best for our donation. And I said, but I can't move, and I'm stuck like I'm in a coffin
For 2 hours.
For 2 hours. Yeah, I said, this could be the worst thing ever. And I said, if it's not a single arm thing, I won't come back. So anyway, all of the plasma donations are single arm, really good. And the people who worked there were just wonderful. And they all became friends, and they had worked at previous blood centers that I went to. And everybody somehow knew somebody else who was in this industry. So it turns out phlebotomists and people who do this, and certain nurses, they're all part of a fraternity clique, if you will. And that was nice, because at least I had some history with those folks. But yeah, then literally, like, you sit, and it's amazing how fast the process is. It's as soon as you sit down, within a minute or two, there's already your blood is being cycled, and you're being rehydrated automatically. So it's not like you're going to leave there feeling lightheaded. You actually feel really good, and you don't need to sit and wait a half an hour, or your day is not shot. You feel like you're ready to go as soon as you're finished. And so I was pretty impressed. I was pretty impressed with that. And just the whole thing is just smooth and seamless. And when they're done, they say, okay, fine, you get a Band-Aid, and off you go. And come back. I think you could give up to twice a week. And that is just a wonderful, the fact that I could go on like a Tuesday and a Friday, or whenever they have space available, I'll just walk out of my house and say, okay, let's go see. So it works for me.
So for the donor, it's like any business that you go to, right? It's time and the value you get for that time. And that's a critical aspect for the plasma donor. If you have to go to a place and stand in line for 2 hours and then donate for an hour, like, it's just, eventually it's not going to be worth your time, right? So that's a critical aspect of plasma donation.
It's rapid, it's fast, but the place is really nice as well. I'm sorry.
Yeah. It's not just transactional, right? It's a nice environment, and the staff is great. Those are all critical aspects of ensuring that donors continue to participate in the process. I myself have experienced as a plasma donor where I go and I sit in the lobby for a couple of hours, and then eventually I get through, and it's not something I'm going to do on a regular basis if that's the case.
Exactly.
Yeah. From your perspective, what are some common misconceptions or fears that people have about plasma donation?
I think when somebody doesn't know, they think that there might be something dangerous by having your blood taken out and spun by a machine and going back in. Maybe they think there's air bubbles, or you can get sick. But they couldn't be further from the truth. And in fact, it's real interesting to watch the whole process. And the people there are so skilled. They're fast. You sit down there like it's no problem. We do hundreds of these a day. You're hooked up, and then literally within minutes of you sitting down, the whole process is going. And it's nice. It's nice to have that. I felt very, very confident as I sat and I donated the first time, and I said, okay, but they're so good at it. It almost seems like a machine. Like, you go, you hook up, and then and you're done within an hour. And that was, the time thing is great. So if somebody goes and thinks it's going to be like a medical procedure, and they're waiting for 3-4 hours every time they go sit, that's a big chunk out of somebody's schedule. And it's not that at all. It's literally, after the check-in, if you do your survey beforehand, you could be in and out in an hour. So it's nice.
So I want to turn our attention now to the compensation aspect. Even as
Yep.
recently as last week, I'm reading this article about plasma donation and compensated donors, and it's trying to draw the lines between the ethical considerations here of compensating somebody to donate their plasma. First of all, these articles almost exclusively miss the boat and fail to connect plasma donation to any sort of patient need. There's never any mention of patients. There's never any patient perspective. That is a critical aspect anytime there's one of these articles that are put out there. Second of all, they always say, okay, these are in low income areas, you're targeting the poor. And so I want to hear your perspective.
So in the past places I went to, I knew somebody back in the day who was a nurse, and they said, "Do you know what we pay for a unit of platelets or a unit of plasma?" And I almost fell off my chair, and I went,
Yeah.
"Ah." But I go to a place that it wasn't it wasn't a place that would compensate the donor, and they said,
Mhm.
"Well, if you donate 10 times, we'll give you a T-shirt." And I said, "You'll give me a T-shirt, and I'm giving you 3 units of platelets, like."
Mhm.
Every other week or whatever it was at the time. And I said, that's crazy. I said, there should be some compensation because it's your time. You spend money in gas, you go someplace, you
Mhm.
sit down. You might not even take the same vitamins or aspirin or whatever your regimen is. You tend to change that so that your blood is in good shape for this kind of
Mhm.
donation. And
Mhm.
when I look at it, I don't do it for the money, but it's nice to have the money that comes as a result of that. But even if your convenience, like for where you are and for my situation, I go because it's the right thing to do and I can help people, you
Sure.
know? And so am I conflicted about this? No. Am I conflicted about it? No, but I would say that it's a nice to have. And if there wasn't
Mhm.
a program that had something like that, then I'm sure somebody would figure out that eventually, to incentivize people to come, they see the dollar signs and they're going to say, "Hey, look what I get. All I have to do is sit here." And you know what? If
Mhm.
cash is tight or if somebody's between jobs and they can come twice a week and they got all the time in the world, hey, that's a way for them to eat.
Yeah. And is payday lending any better indebting a
Yeah,
population?
yeah.
Probably not.
And you get people hooked on that, right? And
Mhm.
maybe I'm hooked on being a plasma junkie because I want to donate, and I go, well, it's great to have that extra money every month. I don't need it to
Mhm.
live on. At this point, I'm still a working guy, and that's my situation. But
Mhm.
I think that it's good because it'll bring a variety of people with a variety of situations in. There's really no
Yeah.
downside to donating. I mean, you don't feel
Yeah.
tired. It's not like you walk around or you're despondent afterwards, or you can't breathe, or you need to
Mhm.
rest. I mean, it's really a quick process.
Yeah. This is a heavily regulated process too, right? There's a lot of
Sure.
safeguards put into place to make sure that it's safe for the donor. And
Hmm.
we have frequency rules in place. We have technology and information sharing across the industry to ensure donors are not trying to game the system and donate at one place and
Yep.
donate another place. So if you have a lot of respect for the donor, which I feel like the industry does have a lot of respect for the donor, and you put the donor first and you think about their health and safety, this is absolutely a safe process. It doesn't matter if you go to a low income area or not. People there have a need, just
Sure.
like anybody else has a need. And if you think about the economy as it stands today, I don't even know how people can afford to live, really. I mean, the
Yeah.
price of housing on traditional, like let's just say traditional jobs, like the price of housing. I think there's a reason why there's a rise in the gig economy, and this is
Hmm.
part of that. And the nice thing about it is it doesn't indebt people with these high interest rates and stuff like that. So I'm not taking on the payday industry, payday loan industry. I'm sure they serve a very valuable purpose, but you can't compare us to them necessarily. And when I say us, I mean the plasma industry, and
Sure.
draw the same lines.
I'd agree. I'd
Yeah.
agree. But there is something that seems sort of predatory about the way the payday loan, they put them in a certain part of town and, hey, I'll
Hmm.
get you your money 2 days early and I'll only charge you 10% of,
Yeah.
that check. And it's sort of, this is not that. This is not that at
Right,
all.
right,
Yeah.
right. Now, what do you think about the environment? You donate in Raleigh. Tell me about the environment of the plasma center. What's it feel like
Sure.
inside?
Yeah, so it's in a small strip mall that's very, very close to my house. That's convenient to a whole bunch of restaurants, but inside is the chairs, the setup. and it's nice and quiet, and the people just are very pleasant, and they have some light music playing in the background. You could put on a headset, you could do whatever you want to do if you want to work. um and they sort of make it nice. I mean, the temperature is always comfortable, and if you have questions, there's always somebody milling around, and you say, hey, this thing, it's stuck on 72%. I'm not sure why. Shouldn't it be going up faster? And there's always somebody close by who can take a look and
Hmm.
say, the machine is rinsing back. Okay, it's just going to be an extra, couple minutes, and it'll continue. So, and these things happen when you're sitting there and you're connected to a machine. You're watching every percent as it goes up, and you go,
Hmm.
okay, how long is it going to take? How long is it going to take? And, you can't fall asleep, because I have, and they've come over and said, yeah, that you can't do. You can't fall
Yep.
asleep, and they don't really want you to sit, everybody's sitting on a phone taking a conference call. They've told me quite clearly, this is not your office. This is actually a
Hmm.
place where we're donating. Other people might not want to hear that. So, okay,
Hmm.
I get it. Personally, to me, it's a joy to go there. I sit and I know
Hmm.
everybody by first name, and they know me and how long I've been there. So, yeah, I'm an early adopter at your center.
Yeah. Yeah. Ambiance is important. I think the more you can create a relaxed environment and something that somebody wants to come back to, right, and participate in. I
Sure.
mean, people are anxious enough coming in here, right? There's needles.
Yeah,
It's a process that you have to go through. So the more we can do as an industry to create an environment where people want to come in and they feel relaxed, then we'll be able to increase the donor pool so that patients do have the sufficient amount of plasma for the therapies that they need.
I'd agree. I'd agree.
All right. So, what message would you have for those individuals who are considering plasma donation but maybe hesitant?
Yeah, I would really say that I don't see any downsides to somebody coming and donating, outside of taking about an hour out of your day, and you're doing good. You're helping people. You're putting some extra money in your pocket, and it's pretty easy. They give it to you on a Visa card, and you can turn it into cash at an ATM. And all those back end things have really been figured out, and they make it easy to just come in and donate. And you get all your stats. You get your blood pressure, height and weight. All these things are checked on a regular basis, every time you come, and you can look back historically and see all your medical stats if that's of interest to you. And I just think you're doing good, and I think the compensation is
Hmm.
fair, and I think that people can go like, hey, well, why not? I have no adverse effects, so what's the downside here? And I really don't see any.
Yeah. Okay. Well, great, great. Thanks for sharing. So, what do you think can be done to further increase awareness and participation in plasma donation?
Yeah, how you guys market, like locally, like I said, I walked by, and because you're right next to where my house is, that's my shopping center. And when
Hmm.
I saw the door was ajar, or that, they were changing the signage, and you know what it was before, Chris.
Yeah.
And when I saw them changing it, I stuck my head in, and I said, "You guys need to put little easels like this out that says, 'Hey, we're here and we're open.'" Because I think if
Hmm.
people understood how it worked, I think that it would attract more local people. Now, there's other
Yeah.
plasma centers, but I think what you guys have is really top notch. It's really
Hmm.
nice inside. It's so pleasant, and like I said, the experience has been great. So, I mean, really, it's getting little banners. I'm not sure if you do it banners or flyers, but the testimonials are always great, and to have that kind of
Hmm.
stuff on your website, I think it goes really far, because somebody's going to go, well, how does this work? Oh, look, they list a website address, and you go there and you say, hear from some of our longest donors, and maybe
Hmm.
maybe something like that to get the message out might be a good thing. Little snippets of like what people think.
Yeah. Yeah, and like the taking Google reviews and stuff like that is, I do think is important, and we really are a community-based
Yeah,
center, right? I mean, regardless, like we are in the
right.
community, and you're right, like we just need to engage the community and invite them
Yeah,
in, even when it's not for donation. Like, hey, come see what this is all about, and just
yeah.
provide information. Thanks for sharing. And Thanks for being on today. I really appreciate that. I really appreciate your perspective. It's critical that we hear from donors and patients alike. And we had a couple of patients at our
Yeah.
center a couple weeks ago, and they were great. They had an amazing story, and it's fun to hear from people such as yourself and the patients.
Yeah, and you know what? The people who actually get the end product, they think that it's like magic, that it just comes from the trees. They're like, I don't know, I needed 3 units of plasma, and they think that it's
Right.
always there. And you sort of assure that that happens, right? Like you guys can
Hmm.
take the product, store it, and then meter it out as it's needed. And I think that
Hmm.
that becomes critical, regardless of
Yeah.
the community or how sick folks are. But I think that that's a wonderful thing to have this on demand, because blood doesn't last that long, right? Blood is like
Right.
it's only a couple of days, but to be able to have plasma like that, I think it's
Hmm.
a wonderful thing. Yeah.
So just quick distinction for the listeners is there's blood and there's platelets and then there's plasma. There's all kinds of different variations in here and different
Hmm.
products that have different timelines. You're a former platelet donor. That is a product that lasts 5 days and then it's has to be discarded.
That's it.
So
Yeah,
it is a logistically complex supply chain.
it
Whereas
is.
the plasma that we collect has a much longer shelf life. It stays frozen and then it goes into a manufacturing pool. In fact, we have to store it for a minimum of 45 days before it even goes into a manufacturing pool. And that just gives us time to make sure that all of the documentation is appropriate and that there's no new information that has come out. So
Wow.
yeah, it's a very interesting supply chain. So,
I didn't realize that that's how it worked, nor did I realize that you held it for that long. So,
yeah. Yeah.
wow, that's like a big buffer to have to meter out. So,
Yeah.
but anyway, I was reading the little thing you sent, and it says, "Hey,
Mm.
can you recant any funny stories?" And I thought I would tell you one, since we know
Yeah.
that you can edit this. But so one of the girls who works at your center said, I had been giving whatever. I was on like donation number 19, and all of
Hmm.
a sudden she comes over. She goes, "Oh my God, what did you eat last night?" And it was first thing in the morning, and I go,
I know what you're talking about. Yeah.
"You know what I'm talking about, right?" And she
Yeah.
says,
Yeah.
"What did you eat last night?" And I couldn't think, and I go, "Oh, I had some Vietnamese pho, the soup."
Hmm.
And she goes, "Was it really like oily?" And I said, "I don't know, it's really yummy." I said, "But it tends to be like a lot of like a big mouthfeel, like a fatty kind of meal." And she
Hmm.
goes, "I can see it in the filter in your blood as it comes out." And
Hmm.
she goes, "You filled up the whole filter with like goop." And I went,
Hmm.
"Are are you kidding me?" And she goes, "No." She goes, "We could tell how healthy somebody eats by what's in their filter the next day." And I said, "You guys should somehow market that, because people would be fascinated to have that
Yeah.
feedback, because they really don't
Yeah.
know, nor could they ever see that any other way." So
Hmm.
I thought that was really
Yeah.
funny.
There's some studies actually done on that, and I'll share them with you after we get off the phone here. But
Mhm.
so cholesterol reduction, because that filter does capture cholesterol that's in your bloodstream.
Oh,
Uh, and the other study they did was
ooh,
it has a positive effect on blood pressure, especially for those donors who continue donating. And there's lots of
wow.
mechanisms, that scientific mechanisms that it gets into, which I will not attempt to describe because that's beyond my
Mm,
training. But it talks about
wow.
that stuff. So it's really interesting. So there are some positive aspects to donation from a health perspective in that regard. Plus, like you mentioned, just simply being aware of your numbers, your
Yeah,
blood pressure and your pulse and all of that over periods of time can be very valuable.
absolutely. That was an added benefit, and I've seen that kind of stuff before, but and typically your numbers, they sort of hover around the same. But like if you're
Mhm.
doing something like, "Oh, I'm going to eat low carb," or "I'm going to eat low fat," and you want to see how that affects your stats,
Mhm.
if you will, you'll know it right away.
Yeah. Yeah, so there is a community health aspect to it for sure. And I do think as an industry, we have not done enough yet to explain those benefits and think about it from that perspective. So,
Hmm. Yeah. Well,
all
anyway,
right.
so thought, I
Well,
thought, I
Chuck,
thought you'd find that interesting.
yeah,
Thank you.
yeah, that is interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, thanks for sharing. So thank you for being on today, Chuck. It's been a very valuable exercise, and I really appreciate you getting the word out there about plasma donation and sharing your experience.
I should also mention that I've had 4 people sign up under me because I told them about how this works, and they're just like,
Nice.
that's fabulous. And there's a nice referral program for those
Hmm.
listeners who are like, really?
Yeah,
And you go like, yeah, if you bring your friend and your friend's friend, and everybody ends up making out, and it's nice. It's nice that you take
yeah,
care of us as donors and those people who come in under us, and I think that's an important way to spread the word as well.
absolutely, absolutely. Um,
Yeah.
All right. Well, again, thank
All
you.
right.
And if any of the listeners out there want more
Thanks.
information, visit proacesbio.com to learn more. So thanks again, Chuck, and drive safe, my friend.
Thank you. I appreciate it. We'll talk to you soon, Chris. Thanks.
Thank you so much for listening, and remember, plasma saves lives. If you enjoyed today's episode, please share with your friends and fellow plasma donors. I'd love to connect with you. If you are interested in discussing today's episode further, please send a message to info@proacesbio.com. That's info@proacesbio.com. And don't forget to follow us on social media for up-to-date information. Find us by searching @ProAcesBio. Talk soon.